Welcome to Behind the Tools. Here's Tradify CEO and your host, Michael Steckler.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Behind the Tools. This week we have another guest in the US, Joshua Bice from Rapid Fire Protection. Welcome to the show, Joshua.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
No, it's great to have you. And Joshua is in actually just North Carolina. I think you're the closest city to you is probably Charlotte, if my approximate kind of geography is correct.
Very good, very good. I'm probably 50 minutes north of Charlotte.
Yeah, cool. So those that don't know, North Carolina is kind of between Washington and Atlanta, to give some perspective on roughly where you are. Very nice, warm part of the world. So great to have you on the show. And you're our first person actually involved in fire. So you're the first guest we've had that's been involved in fire. Do you want to maybe start by just sort of talking a bit about your business and where you're focused?
Sure. We are a fire protection company. We do mostly commercial inspections on fire extinguishers, fire suppression systems of many types, and then exit emergency lights. Our biggest focus is probably on the fire suppression side of things, whether it be restaurants or hospitals or they're really everywhere.
Dry cleaners?
Some dry cleaners, a lot of, so there's different types. Every restaurant in America has a wet chemical fire suppression system.
Yeah.
A lot of our data rooms have clean agent fire suppression systems. A lot of people call those halon, although halon's kind of gone away and been replaced by something else. And then there's dry chemical doing car spray, paint spray booths, and furniture manufacturing where they're spraying veneers. I mean, they're in a lot of different industries. So that's one perk of doing what I do is I get to see behind the scenes of multiple different industries. And I think that's neat. So
yeah, that's pretty, that is actually, I sympathize because we're very similar, although we work with contractors and trade companies across the world. They're all quite different and you're quite unique in what you do. And fire suppression for the uninitiated essentially is a fire, there's a fire in a restaurant. This is when all the sprays come on and put the fire out, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, great, fantastic. And do you want to you've been in the business a while, right? You've been in the business for more than 20 years.
Started about 20 years ago, and have done it pretty much ever since. Of course, I started with another company. I got married and I was looking for a job, and I just kind of fell into this. I'd just going back then, all I needed to do was knock on doors and ask if people were hiring. And I knocked on a little building. They did mostly just fire extinguishers.
Yeah.
And then, it's kind of history from there. Oh, but I immediately fell in love with the industry. Just, some people can sit at a desk all day and some people can work at factories and God bless them, but I need to be doing something different.
Yeah. Do you have to go out often? Is it pretty 24/7?
It is. To be competitive, we have to offer 24/7 because when one of these systems goes off, of course, it triggers, not only does it put the fire out, but in some cases it sets off the building fire alarm, or it shuts down equipment, or it shuts down servers. And these companies, for every minute they're down, they're losing money. So, I wouldn't say it happens often, but a couple times a year, I'll get a call in the middle of the night and you got to put your boots on and go out there.
And get it done. Great. And you talked about the suppression. So that's most of your business. Is the sort of selling product like fire extinguishers just a small part of what you do? Does that tend to just be if someone doesn't have one or they need an upgrade?
I'd say it's probably 50-50. We service fire extinguishers, recharge them, of course, sell new ones all the time. And I'm not sure how it is in New Zealand or in other countries, but our job is really code driven. So they have to have inspections done, and depending on like for fire extinguishers, it's once a year. For suppression systems, it's twice a year. There are some things on a sprinkler system, which we don't do sprinklers, but that are quarterly or more often. So it's really just recurring visits to these places, making sure their equipment's in good working order.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you touched on a good point. So a good part of your business is recurring. So I guess once you've got a customer, you've kind of got them. I use the phrase for life, but you've got them for a long period of time. Has that been your experience once you've kind of signed someone up?
Yes, but it's the service that keeps them coming. I mean, it's answering the phone when they call, and it's getting out there, and it's also, of course, I want their systems working flawlessly, but budget comes into it too. So we have to work with them on their pricing and make sure it's a good fit for everybody. But and not to brag, but over the years, my relationships with my customers have been extremely long lasting. So that's been a real blessing.
Yeah, that must really help. And then do you want to sort of going back a step? You've been in the business a long time. You talked through your experience of getting a job working for someone else. What prompted you? When did you make the move and decide that it's time to go out on your own?
Well, it was always in the back of my mind, and I discussed it with my wife a few times over the years. But listen, the company I was with, the owner of that company also ran it, and he was one of a huge teacher to me, and I learned a lot from him. He was also, as bosses go, a really good boss. However, he decided it was his time to retire, and he sold the company. Had a very successful company, sold it to a much larger competitor, almost nationwide here. Their name's very well known, and that's it was the day he told us that the company was sold is the day my mind was made up. I talked it over with my wife, I think that day at lunch, and she was on board. And that was a huge, I couldn't do this without her. She's a big part of this company. So yeah, gave my notice and started the groundwork, and really haven't looked back. It's been so far really good.
And how did you, once you started the business, how did you get those first customers? Did they already know you?
Sure. No, that was even scarier. I had a non-compete agreement with the former company that basically said I wouldn't go after any of their customers or their employees for 2 years. So no, all those long lasting relationships I had, I had conversations with a few of them. Thanks for everything. This is going to be my replacement. But I had to hit the ground cold and just start knocking doors, handing cards out. But those hours handing cards out, it keeps rolling back in. The phones rings. This month, I'll just to brag a little bit, we've been open 7 months. In December, this month, I have a full month of routes every day. I've already routed it out, and that is that's really exciting for us. So,
congratulations, especially after 7 months, and especially with everything that's happening. That's fantastic news. And anything that you sort of in that process of going out on your own, you talked about learning from your prior boss to some degree. Any big surprises? Anything that was different to what you expected?
No, I don't want to say it was easy, but it's not that hard to start a business. That was surprising, that it wasn't that hard to start a business. Really, everybody just wants some paperwork and a check. That's what I figured out. If you'll get everybody the state for your business name and license, and the insurance people and the workers' comp people, and if you just give them all the paperwork they request and give them a check, you can start a business.
Right. And where are you in terms of employees now?
We're still very small. It is me and my wife. She does a lot of the administrative side and all of the bookkeeping. And my son, who is in high school, does help me and has been working with me on, again, mostly weekend nights or as needed basis, or if he has the day off school. And that's been awesome as well. So right now it's just a, family business.
Family business. Great. That's fantastic. Cool. And most of your customers you talked about, are they mainly restaurants or across the board?
Several restaurants, furniture manufacturing, some daycares, some nursing homes, assisted living. I got several florists, or just, general retail stops. And then a couple of distributions places and a wood mill.
Okay, cool.
So just
and
a
how do you,
variety.
yeah, it's good. That's a good cross section of different types of companies. And how do you keep up to speed? I guess there's, you talked about the codes, and I think it's similar in most countries. It varies in terms of the level of restriction and then the amount of, servicing and reviews that are required. But yeah, how did you keep up to speed? I mean, it's obviously a really important business that obviously has a lot of danger attached to it.
Sure.
Is there things you need to go through and hoops you need to go through every year to keep abreast of all of that?
Yeah, it's years of, there's not a school in North Carolina to do what we do. You have to learn, first you have to learn the codes. So I do a lot of that. I did a lot of that through on the job and just reading the codes. For fire alarms and to delve deeper in the code, we have something over here called NICET. It's a testing, levels to it. So I did go and get my NICET for building fire alarms. Hundreds of hours of safety training, because over the years you go to different industries, and not only did we have our own in-house safety training and OSHA training, but 4 to 5 times a year, I would go to an industry to do work, and they would have their own in-house safety training, 8-hour class we had to sit through. So just a lot of safety training, and then and then you have to learn the systems themselves, and that's mostly done by the factory that manufactures them. So just for, let's say, restaurant systems, there's probably 6 major manufacturers, and I've been to factory training and passed their tests for 5 of the 6, for Ansel, Amerex, Buckeye, Kidda, and Pyrochem. I've over the years done their factory training and carried their certification.
And is that because in some instances you're going into a restaurant that already has a system and you're going into service or upgrade or whatever it is to that system? You're not necessarily, in some instances, I presume you're fitting a new system?
Both. We generally stick with, one system that we're a distributor for that we put in, maybe 2. Right now ours is Buckeye, just because they're made here in North Carolina and they're an awesome fire suppression system. But you have to know the other ones for the existing units out there to be able to go in and know if the right parts are on it. If anything's changed, if the hazard changes, we have to be able to change the fire suppression system with the hazard. And that is not this, it's different for every system out there. So Ansel's rules will be slightly different than Pyrochem's rules, and the same for Kidda or Amerex. You have to, I won't say you have to know the whole system, but you have to be super familiar with it and be able to get into the manual and find whatever question you might have about the system.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I'm guessing, this is a pretty, intense and important business. Has there been anything that's ever gone wrong for you?
Sure. So there's 2 types of fire suppression technicians. There's the kind that have dumped a system while working on it, made it discharge everywhere. And there's the kind that are going to dump a system one day and discharge it everywhere. I think if you do this long enough, you're going to have one of those bad days. And I'm guilty of it. I'd not been doing it but a couple of years, and I was doing this Korean restaurant, and his soup was what was cooking. I remember because it smelled amazing. And I got done with this fire suppression system, put it all back together, came down off my ladder, and I turned to him and I said, "I'm all finished." And at that moment, it discharged all over his cooking equipment, his oven. It ruined his soup. And I panicked. I didn't even, I said, I'll be right back. And I went outside and called my boss. And I was like, man, this thing just went off. What am I supposed to do? And he took it, again, it was the same boss. He took it really great. He was like, take a deep breath, go back in there and start cleaning up. I'll send somebody out there to help you. So, you know, it's not a good day, but it does happen.
How did he feel about his soup? How did he take it? Did he take it with good humor or?
That boss I was just telling you about also bought his entire soup for the day. So he did not lose any money on the soup. Yes.
That's a great way. That's actually, there's a lesson there in itself. That's a really great way of handling that sort of situation and taking this thing out of it. Yeah. And it happens. People make mistakes.
I learned something else from him and from my dad, but it is really easy for me to deal with angry customers. Not that I've had a lot of them, but people do get emotional about their businesses. Rightly so. They put their heart and soul into it. Something goes wrong one day and they are upset. But the question was, anytime you have a customer upset, what's it going to take to make it right? Just tell me, I will make it right. And generally that, you know, once they have a minute to calm down and emotions level out, you know, it's just a good opportunity to show them what kind of service you can give them in an emergency. Right. So,
yeah, they're usually good examples of actually turning a situation around and actually making it more positive than they probably felt about you previously because of the gesture.
Sure.
It's a great recommendation. And anything, you know, you've done this now for 7 months. Sounds like it's been, you know, very successful. You know, congratulations. Any advice you'd give to anyone else that's in a similar position, maybe in comparable businesses, that is working for someone else? Maybe the business has been sold. Maybe they're looking just to go and start out on their own. Anything that you think you did that would be useful?
Sure. I mean, you have to just set aside any fear you might have and do it. You know, and I think the universe tells us things. When I was considering this right there at the end, before we found out he was selling, I was in a race car shop. Guys build race cars for NASCAR. It was amazing. And I was trying to find my contact there. That doesn't matter. I walked by this guy and he's doing the decals on the race car, putting the stickers on the race car.
Yeah.
And I said, do you know where the owner is? And he said, no, they all went to lunch. I'm just here doing the stickers. I said, you do this for a living? He said, yeah, I started my business 5 years ago and now I do all their race cars. And I said, I've been thinking about starting my own business. And he didn't know me from Adam. And he said, just do it. He said, don't think about it, just do it. And I don't know, that stuck with me. It was not, you know, it was just that was one in a chain of events that said, you know, it's time to do this. So.
Yeah, it's actually a few people have said that, which is a lot of people are very nervous about, you know, intimidated by what it's involved. Right? There's a lot of risk. You're on your own.
Sure.
But I think you're right. Everyone that's done it just says they reach a point where usually a conversation like that with someone else, family, friend, who just says, well, what are you waiting for if you're going to do it? You know, there's never a good time. Let's put it that way. There'll always be a reason not to. So yeah, I think that's great advice. And then, you know, when you got your first customers, going back to how you got your first customer, just intrigued, was that just a card or that you'd left behind that someone just phoned you up, or were there ads as well? Or did you get someone on a door knock?
No, I did have some relationships that weren't business related that I reached out to. Obviously I called them my church. They were one of the first ones to sign up, and that was huge. And then there was a small car lot, and I'd actually bought my son's first car from this lot. Guy's got one fire extinguisher, but I'm working the whole street, right? I'm just going from door to door, handing the cards out. And we strike up a conversation, and he let me do his one fire extinguisher. He bought one other fire extinguisher to take home with him. And I wrote him his bill, and he wrote me a check. And it was the first time I'd seen somebody else write my company name out. And I almost choked up, to be honest. And he was so nice. He said, listen, don't listen to the losers. And if you have a bad day, come by and talk to me. And I haven't had to go by and talk to him yet, but I will if I ever have that bad day. So
Oh, that's a really nice nice gesture. There is something about local business networks. Actually, I've heard that pretty much in every country in the world there are these sort of local business networks which act as a support mechanism, right? When things aren't going well, or actually even if they are going well, you know, you need another van, or you need to hire someone, or you need an accountant, or whatever that looks like. There's someone there to support that, and I think actually speaking to other small business owners is really, really important in this journey. I think that's one thing that you know I'm hearing, and because they've probably got the scars from things that didn't go the way they expected, or they probably had those years which were tougher than others. And I think it gives kind of some level of perspective, which is really useful. And it sounds like you haven't needed that yet, and that must have been a great moment getting that first check. And actually, also, I mean, it sounds like you really pounded the pavement to get business, which I think is good advice. But a lot of people don't do that. They might run some ads and hope that business comes, but actually, there's an element of going out there, right, and putting a face to the business and doing all that stuff.
It's invaluable. And don't get me wrong, we did, you know, the Google ads, and some of my cold calling was targeted, especially the local sprinkler companies, because a lot of them don't actually do what I do. They focus just on sprinklers, building sprinkler systems.
Yeah.
So they get calls every day, of course. Hey, do you guys do X? Well, they don't. I do. So I tried to cultivate a lot of relationships with the sprinkler companies, and I'm a sub for 3 of them now. So that's, you know, again, a way work kind of gets funneled in a little bit, but nothing replaces just getting up and hustling every day. I've not found, other than just knocking on doors and handing those cards out. And a friend of mine calls it, you know, kissing hands and shaking babies. He gets those backwards. In America, it's, you know, kissing babies.
And shaking. Don't be shaking babies. Yeah, that's not great advice.
But just getting out there every day, you know, even when it's cold, even when it's raining.
Yeah, no, it's really good advice. And then the sort of last question really around the business, you know, do you have a plan? Do you have a number in your head that you want to get to think about hiring extra people? Is that part of the plan in terms of growth?
Yes. I do have not so much a dollar number, but a job amount number. And what I have to do is build a book. Really, all I have to do to get my first employee, and I'm close, is build a book that is 6 busy months, because they'll recur. That 6 months starts over for me. So it's really a year. And after that, it again, recurring, that would be when we get our first guy, or put my son, you know, if that time works out where he's graduated high school, and if he'd like to come into business with me more, then that would be great. That's going to be there for him, although I'm not locking him into that either. So.
Oh, that's nice. He's got the choice, and if he decides that's what he wants to do, then you've got a great family business there, which would be cool. Fantastic, Joshua. This has been really, really insightful. We always finish on a few questions, which I'm gonna ask you. I'm intrigued by your first answer, actually, which is, if you did pick another trade to do, if you weren't doing fire suppression, what would you pick? What would you want to be?
A different trade other than fire suppression. I really do love what I do. You know, I've done roofing. I don't want to do any more roofing.
Especially in the summer in North Carolina, I can imagine that would be pretty intense.
It can be brutal. Honestly, from being on all the different job sites, I would learn HVAC. If I'm talking to somebody out there in the world thinking of, you know, what trade should I go into, those guys seem to always be necessary. And some of the bills I've seen, they bill for their time.
Yeah. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? I didn't want to say expensively, but I've seen some huge bills from those guys. So they're doing, they're doing some big jobs.
Yeah. Great. And then when you're out and about and you're, you know, not eating the soup that you've that's been sprayed, what lunch would you? What would be your choice of lunch if you were treating yourself on site?
If my wife can meet me, we like sushi. And I, let's see, as a treat, I mean, Korean barbecue.
Yeah, nice. And just as a side note, but if you're doing a restaurant, you're fitting their suppression, and you happen to be there for the day, would they give you a lunch?
Some will, some they offer. For the longest time, I just always declined. There have been a couple over the years that, I could not turn down. But for the most part, oh yeah, they try to feed me almost daily, but again, I don't want to take from their profits, and I'm not there to sit down and eat.
No, you're there.
I'm really. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was just thinking because we had a conversation with someone in the UK where it was a residential house, and the owner was bringing him lunch every day, and at the end of the job, she sent him a bill for the lunch. So
seriously,
yeah, quite funny. So I was just wondering if the same thing happened. And then, what's you talked about? You really talked about the suppression system you use. Do you have a tool that you wouldn't live without, or your go-to tool brand?
Oh, channel locks. Because most of these systems are put together with between 3/8 and 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch pipe,
right.
And it's threaded together. I mean, I grab 2 pairs of channel locks on every job I'm on.
Yeah, cool, great, fantastic. And then things are obviously a lot more opened up in the US than they have been, which has been good to see. Would you pick a sporting event or a live music event you'd love to get to?
Oh, I would have. Over here, it's college football, American football, college football. We're the SEC. It's like a cult. I'm not sure how aware people are about it in the rest of the world, but we're crazy about it. We scream at the TV. Yeah, I'd love to go see specifically an Auburn, Alabama football. They just had the game over Thanksgiving. My team lost. It was brutal. In 4th overtime.
Oh, wow.
We lost. So that was,
painful.
Yeah, painful.
Yeah. No, I think there is a general awareness of how big college football and basketball is, but I don't think people would really get it quite as much until you live there and see just how big it is and how passionate people are about their local teams. That's the
Yes, and you're brought up in it. Your family, your whatever team your family was for, that's who you're for.
You sat with them, rain or shine. Yeah, cool, great. And then anyone else that you come across you think we should speak to next on your travels?
That I should speak to next.
We should speak to next. Yeah, sorry, us. Yeah, interesting people who are maybe in a trade that you come across you think would make a great conversation.
Listen, yes. He is actually a restaurant owner, but I don't service any of his. He owns a chain of restaurants around Cleveland, Tennessee. He has grown this. I think he just opened up a franchise, or helped one of his franchisees open up in Chicago. So he went from. I grew up with this guy. His name is Milan Patel. I hope that's okay. I said that. But super articulate, one of the smartest people I know, and he's been a huge help to me. When I say it's easy, but when I was opening up this business, I probably called him 15 times just to pick his brain, and he would answer the phone and tell me, and just, this is all it is. This is, you do that online, or you call this person, and he was a huge help. And I think
that's,
would do much
useful.
better.
Yeah.
Sorry. He'd do much better at this than I would, or that I'm doing.
You've done great. I think it's interesting you mentioned that, because actually building a business is building a business, whether it's whether you're in construction or whether you're in something different. And so that's interesting that you use that person. Most people who have done built successful businesses often have, whether they're mentors, friends, family, people that have been through it. It's a really useful thing to do, and actually just to have that person that will take the call and give you that honest feedback is really, really useful. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Well, Joshua, I'll let you. I know you're a busy man. Congrats again on on building the business in the last 7 months, and I hope it continues to be very successful. Keep doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate the conversation. It's really insightful, and I'm sure very useful for lots of people that are either on the journey or about to embark on this journey over the next few years. Cool, great.
Thank you, Michael.
No, you're welcome. As always, everyone else, I hope you found that useful and insightful. And if you have any comments, questions, feedback, and want to give us a great review on Apple, whatever your podcasting or video platform of choice is, please do. Until next time, cheers. See ya.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Behind the Tools is brought to you by Tradify, job management software for your trade business. If you enjoyed the podcast, let us know by leaving a review, and be sure to tell your mates about it. Email behindthetools@tradifyhq.com if you or someone you know would be keen to join the show as a guest.